Thank you for tuning in to No Sudden Moves Radio. And remember, stay on the proven path so you don't risk falling behind. Here at Business Legends, we don't overthink it. Look around and see what everyone else is doing. If it's working for them, it will work for you.
Welcome to Wait It Out, where we believe there's no reason to act now. The opportunity will still be there when the timing is better.
The age of disruption isn't coming, it's here. And the boldest move isn't following the crowd, it's following your why. I'm Patrick Ledden, and you're listening to Disruption Lab. Welcome back to Disruption Lab. Last week, I was out in Los Angeles speaking at a large conference, and it was one of those really rewarding trips where my wife Jamie came along, and we decided to stay a few extra days after the conference was over. Now, we spent time walking along the marina, enjoying great conversations, good meals, slowing down a bit, and honestly, just appreciating the fact that we've worked hard over the years to design a life that works with our work, instead of constantly fighting against it. Now, the truth is that's not always been the case. And we sometimes struggle with it, even today. Because like a lot of people, there have been seasons where work ran everything in our life. Deadlines, pressure, nonstop motion, and feeling like success always had to come at the expense of time and health, relationships, or even peace of mind. Which is one of the reasons I'm excited about today's guest. Craig Ballantyne has built his career helping people create what he calls perfect days, perfect weeks, and ultimately becoming unstoppable in the pursuit of meaningful success. But what I appreciate so much about Craig's work is that it's not just about productivity. It's about clarity. It's about discipline. It's about the ability to disrupt ourselves along the way by setting priorities and boundaries and intentionally building a life you actually want to live. I first met Craig when he hired me to speak at one of his mastermind events. But frankly, I was blown away by both Craig's wisdom and the practical nature of his approach. He has a way of cutting through noise and getting to what really matters. So today, Craig is joining us to share some of those ideas with you. And before we jump in, if you find value in what happens in the conversation today, I'd appreciate it if you'd share Disruption Lab with others who might benefit from it as well. That's one of the best ways we can make sure that we continue to provide value to this community and bring in guests like Craig. So with that said, Craig, welcome to the show.
Man, this is going to be a lot of fun, Patrick. Thank you.
It's going to be a ton of fun. I kind of got you on the show, and I think in a really interesting way in that you reached out through someone that I knew, a guy named Jeff, to say if I'd be willing to speak at an event you had coming up. And I did that in Nashville, and kind of prepping for that event and then meeting you that day, I'm like, gosh, I need to put you in front of my audience.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you're here today. If you don't mind, tell a little bit about who you are and your journey, because I think it'll help the listeners know a bit more about your story.
Yeah, I'm a farm boy from Canada, and I grew up wanting to be in the National Hockey League in some way, and I thought I'd be a strength and conditioning coach of all things. I went to university for all that stuff and was really, really close to doing it, and realized I'm introverted by nature, and so it actually drained me to do what I wanted to do. So I was like, I got to figure something out here. And when I was in college, that was when the internet came along and disrupted so many lives. And I saw people doing, putting information online and selling stuff. And I'm like, I can do this too. So I started doing it, not knowing anything about it. And I got lucky. I got a break in 2000 when I started writing for Men's Health magazine, because all I did was I found the fitness editor's email address, And I just sent him a couple of my email articles, and he said, "Oh, this is good." And it was right around when he was disrupting the content inside of Men's Health magazine. And that was back when people actually read magazines. And so it was really a big deal to be in Men's Health. And that gave me what I call the critical credibility to continue my disruptive journey, because here I was, a 25-year-old kid, quote unquote, and I was interviewing people from my websites that were big names in the industries. And when you do that, then all of a sudden you kind of tap into their network and their audience, and you grow it that way. And so I sold stuff on the internet in the fitness industry for 15 years. Along the way, people asked me, like, how do you get so much done? You're like so productive. And because I ran a couple of businesses, and then so I started coaching people all the way back in 2007 on what I do. And it's evolved into me working now with, I would say dozens upon dozens of industries. We have coaching clients these days that do everything from, traditional construction to grass-fed beef farmers to, who run city magazines, all these types of things. We're just helping people get more done, be more profitable, and have more time and financial freedom.
That's one thing I noticed when I was talking to the group that day at your event, and I'm going to ask you to tell a little bit about that event in case people are interested in learning more. But was the diversity. Mm-hmm. I had a guy walk up to me and say, we're making coffee that doesn't grow, bad microbes and things in it. Yeah. And somebody else is like building their, their practice, their medical practice. It was a wide range of things.
There was somebody in that group who sells seed corn. So, I grew up on a farm. Like, I know what you sell. It's like they sell seed corn. They're out of Iowa. And so, we do have a very diverse group of people. And, everybody kind of leaves their non-business baggage at the doors. And you got people from both sides of the political spectrum in there just sharing and helping one another, because, I'm very agnostic about that type of stuff. And what I want to see is people who, we like to say is we have good people, old phrase, nice guys finish last. No, not in our group. Good people finish first.
That's so funny you say that, because I use the expression "go disrupt for good," and I'll talk about like the book and things that we wrote around how do people disrupt for good. And somebody's like, "Well, how do you define good?" Well, that's a great question, but at the end of the day, if you're not doing something illegal or something clearly immoral, and you figured out what you're trying to do in life, and you're out disrupting the world to make that happen, that's typically you're doing some good stuff, and we want more good stuff in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, totally.
Now, it's interesting, too, when you see a diverse range of people in the room, all different kinds of people trying to make their thing bigger or get their thing going, you start to realize, gosh, some of the things that you're talking to them about transcend industry. They transcend geography. They're actually more like principles or things that are basic truths about how we can be more effective in life.
Absolutely. And one of the things that applies to everybody in life, in every position in life, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, whether you're a parent or not, is we've come down and identified one of the keys to success is emotional regulation. And those people that can regulate their emotions, that they don't let their highs get too high and they don't let their lows get too low, if they can stay pretty steady Betty, even Steven, whatever you want to say, that will really help you out in the long run. Because what we see is we see so many good people with great ideas, with disruptive ideas, whether it's in education, healthcare, etc., and they hit a setback, and all of a sudden they make up stories in their head, and all the energy, like I like to think of everybody's brain as like a computer processing unit. You only have so much power there. And if you're putting so much power and energy into creating a story about something that may or may not happen, in most cases not happen in the future, all that energy, that creative energy, could have been used to solve a real problem, but instead is making up a story. And we see this time and time again. And the people that are able to transcend that and develop emotional regulation are going to be in it for the long haul and be able to make it through the dips that's going to come along with any disruptive idea. One of my favorite things these days is Poppy. I don't know. Have you ever drank a Poppy soda?
Yeah. Yeah, okay. I know what that is. Yeah.
What an incredible story. And I randomly got the founder's Instagram post yesterday about, they started out at flea markets and farmers markets and they were working 24/7, and they put, maxed out their credit cards and took a loan out on their home and did all this stuff, right? Now, today, people only see the $1.95 billion sale to whoever bought it, right? And they only see it everywhere. But they don't see the backstory of the sacrifices and everything that they made. Now, the majority of people will never have gotten that far because when maxing out your credit cards or some other setback came, people hit what I call them panic button pushers. Most people are panic button pushers and abandon the dream at that point. But if you abandon the dream, you abandon the disruption. And that Poppy soda is one of the greatest disruption stories. I mean, we're keeping them in business. We probably our family is probably responsible for about $1 billion of that $1.95 billion.
That's so funny. As you were talking about that regulating emotion, it reminded me one time when I was teaching a class at Vanderbilt here, I had some baseball players in a class. And they were talking about their coach of their baseball team, a gentleman named Coach Corbin here in Vanderbilt. And Vanderbilt's had a pretty good track record of baseball. They're a good baseball team. And they talked about how he doesn't, when they win a bunch of games or come back and win a game, he doesn't want them to get their energy too high, their excitement level too high. And when they're struggling, he doesn't want it too low. He knows it's going to go there naturally, but the biggest thing is he wants to get them back to neutral as quickly as possible. And I think that's kind of reflective of what you're talking about there.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite sports quotes is, when you get to the end zone, act like you've been there before. And so, a lot of people, when they get to the end zone, they just, get crazy and stuff like that. But again, that's wasted energy. And one of my mentors is a guy named Tim Grover, who was Michael Jordan's personal trainer and wrote this incredible book, Relentless, which is, still selling nearly 10 years after it was released. And then he was in Tim was in the Last Dance documentary on Netflix and has a book called Winning. And he was talking about, what Michael Jordan would do after they won the championship. It was like, done, next, what time we meeting tomorrow morning at the arena? Like, this is in the locker room after, like, everybody's spraying champagne and Michael Jordan's like, okay, what time tomorrow? And because he's always thinking about the next one. Now that's really super hardcore. And I'm not saying, not have emotion, not celebrate wins, not celebrate your children's, life events and stuff like that. But, celebrate, then done, next, on to the next one. And likewise, on the flip side, when you do go through a tough time, as Winston Churchill said, when you're going through hell, keep going. You have to, because you have no other choice, right? Like, it's either quit or keep going. And, people listening to this are not quitters. So provided that you're doing things that are calculated risks, that are inside your circle of competence, to steal a phrase from Warren Buffett that I really like that keeps people out of trouble. If you're doing all the right things, and as a business owner, I've gone through periods of time where we are doing the right things. We are doing the blocking and tackling. We are focusing on the basics. We're doing everything right. The results are not here yet, but they will be here. And I know they will be. We just have to keep on going. And of course, we're making the calculated decisions along the way. That's what you have to mentally prepare yourself for, because those things are going to come up in every area of life, whether you're a business owner or not. And I mean, so I'll just give you a quick story. I have 3 toddlers under the age of 4, and we do watch a little bit of YouTube with them. And we watch this guy named Danny Go. And so Danny Go is a YouTube disruptor. This guy was originally in corporate America, and he just really did well at doing these little songs and dances for his kids at home. And so the next thing you know, he started to make YouTube videos. He's one of the biggest YouTubers in the kids niche, and he just got a Netflix special. Unfortunately, one of his sons just passed away this week from childhood cancer. And so here is this guy, like, in the same year that he gets a Netflix special, his 14-year-old, I believe, passes away from childhood cancer. Like, come on, like, you're putting this man through the ringer, right? Season of Job. And so that's going to happen to people. And it's easy for you and I to sit here and go, oh yeah, that's really too bad. And, we're going to go on to our lives after this. But that's a guy out there who's going through it. And, if he's got that emotional regulation, he's going to get through this. Obviously you have to grieve healthily. But then he's really making an impact because he disrupted children's entertainment. It's just incredible what he does with his videos, and away you go. So, I mean, it's just another story that I wanted to share with people to help them understand that power of emotional regulation, because we're all going to get, whacked blindside at one point in our lives.
Yeah, we all have those moments. I mean, that's obviously the one you just went through with Danny. That's a huge thing, but we all have those moments, whatever it might be, that kind of knock us down, and the ability to get back up and to kind of, it's so funny. I have some people I know who would say to me, Patrick, you are uber pragmatic. and I am pretty pragmatic. I have a bit of a steadiness to me.
Yeah.
I do have the let's keep blocking and tackle and it'll work out. Just we got to play this game for a while.
Yeah.
And then I also have things like, gosh, you can be uberly like a dreamer. Like you think this thing's going to happen. And I don't know what the balance is on that. I don't know what you see with people you work with, but there's a bit of like, I have this thing like it can get better and this thing can happen, but at the same time, I'm like living in reality here.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I believe that there needs to be a certain amount of delusional hope in the entrepreneur. Like that young guy with the coffee stuff. You're entering like one of the most competitive, crowded, biggest markets in the world. Coffee of all things. Like, everything's been done with coffee, and here he comes in with a mold-free coffee, and it's wonderful what he's doing, and he's got big dreams, and he's having some good progress. And that's the way you have to be, because we have clients who are disrupting the fintech industry, and he's like, they're doing 300 million, so they've done great stuff, but they're talking about 3 billion, and those are really big numbers, and it requires you to be able to convey that enthusiasm and that vision and that dream. And so there's a lot of great stories out there, like the guy from Tom's Shoes and how he galvanize that. And the Patagonia story that you tell in your book was one of my favorites in that book, because again, the disruptive changes that they did, the counterintuitive stuff, the against the norm, against the everything that everybody does in the industry. We're going to do something completely different around fabrics and fibers and all this stuff because it's true to our core. Like, man, those are some super delusional moves.
Yeah.
Very delusional moves. And just before this, I was on LinkedIn and reading an article about Lululemon and Alo. And so again, I believe we've also in our house have supported those two companies. Most of their profits come from us. But anyways, Alo is a yoga wear company that has completely knocked Lululemon off the perch. Those people had to be delusional to go and do that, right? And the people that left OpenAI to go and start Anthropic also had to be delusional in order to do that. Anybody that's played pro sports kind of has to sort of be delusional. And when you were talking about, where we were talking about the blindsided aspect of it, and you've always got to keep going, keep steady. I don't watch pro sports anymore, but when I did, and we all remember, those of us that watch the NFL, remember that Tom Brady comeback against the Atlanta Falcons. Like that is one of the greatest business lessons inside a sports game, that all of a sudden the Atlanta Falcons started playing not to lose. And anybody who's ever watched a football game knows that that's how you lose a game, by playing not to lose.
Yeah, the prevent defense prevents you from winning, right?
Right, exactly. Now, how delusional does Tom Brady have to be to go, in the locker room and know that he's going to win the game and come back and win that game? And that's what makes the greatness. And so, there's a lot to be said about accepting your reality, but also you got to be delusional about what you want to accomplish. And one of my favorite things in the world, just to finish this up, is the Stockdale paradox. Are you familiar with it?
Sure. Yeah.
So Admiral James Stockdale, who spent 7 years in a prisoner of war camp in Vietnam, he has the Stockdale paradox, which is you cannot afford to ignore the harsh realities. You must deal with them. But you can also not afford to lose hope that you will win in the end. And hey, that's entrepreneurship in like one sentence right there, because you will get beat down. There will be days, and parenting and everything in life, you will get beat down. There will be days when your dog runs away, your spouse kicks you out of the bedroom and makes you sleep on the couch, and you get punched in the gut, and you have to show up. And not only as an entrepreneur, you have to show up at work the next day, and you have to not let any of your employees see it. You can't let them see you sweat, and you can't let them know that you're 1 month away from not making payroll or whatever it is. You just got to go and put that smiley face on, because that's what's required in that position. So I think one of the last things I'll leave you with here is like in this segment is just understand, like, accept that you will have to take on certain responsibilities if you want to achieve something of greatness.
There's and that's so true. And you're right on the Stockdale paradox. The people that were like, we're going to get out by Christmas. Yeah. Or the people who said, we'll never get out. I mean, those two things are very competing in your mind sometimes. And that does cause us to put our own, obviously it applied in his situation, a POW type of situation. But in our situation, sometimes it's a huge limiting factor we put on ourselves. One thing I like about your work is as I would say, as much as it is aspirational in what can be done in the life you can live, it's also tactical in the way you go about doing it. I mean, you've paid the price, Craig, to kind of break down how to live a life like that. And it starts. I love how you talk about the idea that it's not about like, hey, build your business this way, then figure out how to plug your life into it. It's like figure out the life you want and then build your work around it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'm like you. I'm a very pragmatic person, and so I grew up in a family where my parents stayed married, but they weren't. Didn't have much communication. It was basically like they were divorced but living in the same house. And so to me, growing up, it's like I wanted that family that I saw on TV. I grew up watching The Cosby Show and Family Ties, and Growing Pains, where the parents actually loved one another. And so I realized that business was a vehicle towards monetary freedom, but it could also be a vehicle towards freedom in terms of time. And the classic, being able to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, wherever you want. And there are certain times and phases and seasons of business where you kind of have to work a little bit more in order to get things started or to get through a tough time. But also, you can design your life around the way that you wanted it. And so I wanted to design my life so that I could spend time with my family, that I could work the hours that I wanted, that we could operate our business from wherever we wanted. And that was, kind of internet dependent, a little bit harder 40 or 50 years ago. But that's everything that I viewed my future is designable. I can make it as close to I want it to be as possible. And so that's where I want to get with most people, because most business owners, they start the business with a general idea of freedom, but not the specific. And the next thing you know, you can say yes to this and yes to that, and you can get yourself like you can just wake up and go, oh my goodness, I'm all of a sudden in this almost golden handcuffs prison that I've put myself in. I can't escape. I can't leave because the business can't operate without me. Or, I'm working all these hours and I don't know how to get out of it. And we try and free people from that. And more importantly, we prevent people from getting there in the first place, which comes down to something that doesn't seem super tactical at the moment, but getting them to give us a vision of what they want their future to look like. And when you get a very clear vision of where you want to go in the next 3 to 5 years, we've been able to help design the step-by-step plan to get people there, almost exactly what they wanted.
It's almost like you can just, once you figure that out, you can start to reverse engineer this thing.
Reverse engineer is a phrase we use a lot.
What's the game that I need to play? How many of these and how many of those do I need to make happen in order to get this machine to work?
Yes, but also what is very important and is a very common reoccurring theme in our work is what do we need to not do, right? What is the dangerous detour? Here's a straight line to success. And most people can figure out the straight line to success. The problem is that most people can't stop going off on the dangerous detours. And this is like, here's a great example, dieting, right? Everybody knows what they should eat in order to lose 20 pounds. But I mean, my goodness, food marketing in America makes it very difficult for you to stop going off on the dangerous detours. I always say, like, when people give America a hard time, say, like 40 or 50% people are obese there. I say, go to America, because I'm from Canada, so I can say this, right? Go to America and look at everything that's available on every corner and all the billboards and all the commercials and say, that's amazing that 100% of Americans are not obese.
How are they not all?
Right. It's unbelievable, especially in Nashville, right? It's like so much good food and five Daughters Bakery. My goodness. So it's success comes through subtraction in most cases. So if you were to say to me that you wanted XYZ and ABC and you wanted to live here in 5 years and you wanted this car in the garage and you wanted the business to look like this, it'd be very simple to put together the blueprint to get there. And then we'd also need to have a very hard conversation about what's going to stop you, what cannot happen, what cannot take up your time, what do you have to say no to. And saying no is one of the most difficult things for the entrepreneur who has grand dreams, because a partnership comes their way and it's like, oh man, this could lead to this, and who knows what'll happen, or come to this conference, come and do this, and then you can fill your calendar with things that might lead to something. I call it lottery ticket marketing. Oh, you should do this, it might lead to something. Well, if you spend all your time on stuff that might lead to something, you end up completely depleting your resources, your time, your energy, your money. And so those things have to be kept in check, because the analogy that I use, Patrick, is imagine you and I were at the Boston Marathon, and we're both, everything else being equal, we both run 3-hour marathons. And some guy comes up to you and says, hey, you know that guy that just ran under 2 hours? Here are the shoes that he uses. I'm going to give them to you, Patrick. And you go, wow, this is cool. It might like take 15 seconds off my 3-hour marathon. And I'm like, hey, what do I get? And he goes, well, we're going to put a backpack on your back that's filled with 60 pounds of sand. And which one of those things will have a greater impact on our time for the marathon? Obviously, the negative, putting the backpack of sand. And so if I shed that, then I will have greater results. And so most people, were walking around with these self-inflicted balls and chains that we put on ourselves that are slowing us down from being a better parent, being a better entrepreneur, losing weight, working on a relationship, because we're so busy in a million other things that we're too busy to do the work that matters.
Do you find sometimes, I'm just thinking like the business I run and what I've been building, there's part of me that thinks, so I had a company years ago that I did exit and had a good sell on that. And now I'm, rebuilding, doing a new thing. And I'm just wondering, is it sometimes the person who doesn't, it kind of has that rookie smart, like they don't know, they haven't been down the path before, that sometimes might be more open to suggestions, as opposed to the other one that gets kind of within just a few yards of it, but it would require them to make just a few small changes, but they, for whatever reason, hang on to those things?
Yeah. And it's, I used to say that I love speaking to young people at events more than I like speaking to people of my own age, because people of my age are more jaded to certain things. And this is a really great example with AI these days, because AI is one of the major disruptors of all time, right? Yeah. And I work with clients who have 10, 15, 20, $25 million businesses who have zero AI in their business. And it's so hard to get them to put any in, because they think it's not coming for them. They think that it doesn't fit in their business. We do solar sales, blah, blah, blah. And it's really hard to work with those folks. And I think that there's a lot of protection in some of them, but every business could benefit from it. Whereas on the flip side, a younger person who doesn't know anything and they're more open to AI, those are the people that are really going to change the world in the next couple of years, are those people in the sweet spot of like 22 to 30 who grew up with technology, who are open to the idea of using AI, who know nothing but. And I was talking to one of my clients, the guy who's at 300 million, and he's like, he said, I'd hate to be a guy who's 35 years old or a woman who's 35 years old in corporate America right now, because that job is probably going to go away. And unless they are willing to get into AI, I don't know what they're going to be doing in 3 years from now. And that's really the truth. So back to your question about, is it good to have some kind of beginner's luck, as Mr. Miyagi said in The Karate Kid. Yeah, it is good to be a little bit naive and not know what you're not supposed to be able to do, but also that means you're a little bit more open to trying new things. So, it's all a little bit of luck and calculated risk, because, you could have 3 things that all seem like a good idea to try, and hopefully you choose the right one, because sometimes I've chosen the wrong ones in the past. I think one of the things that separates good from great entrepreneurs is that the great entrepreneurs know when to kill something quickly. And so, for example, one of my most successful friends who sold stuff, over $100 million worth of information products on the internet, I've never met a person who is more willing to shut down a profitable business that isn't what he wants to do or isn't moving things towards the bigger picture. He will kill a business that's making him $1 million a year profit, because he knows that's not the thing. That thing, by doing that thing, it will stop him from making $10 million a year in profit. And most people are not willing to do that because of the sunk costs, right? Oh, I've already put so much time and energy into that. We built the website. We've done this. I don't want to waste all that time, energy, and money. But, if you hold on to that, it's stopping you from doing the next great thing. So that's another way that sometimes people self-sabotage themselves by not having that open-mindedness to something that can lead to greater things.
And that's a tough thing, I think. Sometimes it's
Very
a matter
tough.
of, do I double down on this thing? Do I pivot right now? Is this the right thing? I'm listening to different voices. I'm kind of going for walks in nature, like I know you say, go out and
Yeah,
get out to
absolutely.
nature, do some thinking. And I'm doing all these things, and then sometimes you just, I don't know which way to move this. And I'm not just talking about me personally, although I've been in those moments, but I'm sure people listening right now have been like, I don't know, do I double down on this thing? Do I rethink it? Do I stop it? And what is your advice? I'm sure you talk to entrepreneurs all the time that are kind of looking at these things, and some of them may be very industry or technology specific, but are there some things you could ask them to ask themselves to help them think about it a bit?
I think one of the things that you said there is they're listening to a lot of voices. And at some point you have to just cut it off with how many voices you are listening to, because there's no industry in the world where everybody agrees on everything. I used to get this all the time in the fitness industry when I ran that business, is why can't you guys just agree on the number one way to lose weight? Well, I'm like, hey, listen, you go to grade 3 teachers and ask them if there's the number one way to teach math, or go to a real estate agent and ask them if there's the number one neighborhood in which to live. Like, nobody agrees upon everything. And so if you're listening to 10 podcasts and you got 4 audio books going, it's time to limit the inputs, because at a certain point, you should be an expert in your area. So you're an expert in the blocking and tackling, the basics. And then you have to trust your gut intuition and choose 1, maybe 2 voices to listen to, because it's kind of like dieting. I've always said that every diet works. It's the person who doesn't do the work of the diet. Like, if you want to go low carb. I don't care. You want to be a fruitarian? Great. Go be a fruitarian. They're all going to work if you are willing to stick to the diet. And it's the same with the voices. Don't listen to 19 voices. Just choose 1 voice. Most likely they're going to be right 80% of the time. And then combine that with your basic knowledge and your gut intuition, and spending time thinking. More time thinking and creating outputs, and less time consuming information and getting more inputs. That's what you need to do. Stop collecting more dots and start connecting the dots on your own, because you probably know the answer.
Yeah, there's a degree of pull taking that can happen in your life, right? I believe there's a value in customer discovery to a certain extent, but when you're talking to 100, 200, 300, 400, and you keep hearing the same thing, maybe it's time to stop
Just
talking
draw
to
the
them
line
and maybe do something, right?
Yeah.
Or on the other hand, it might be just a good idea, cutoff date. We need to execute this thing. Let's make this thing happen. I'm very fortunate. You were kind enough to share a number of your books with me, and I want to tell about a couple of your book titles, and then encourage people to check them out. And maybe if you want to say to me, hey, this is why that particular one's interesting, what people might get out of it. So I'm going to rattle through. Them, of course,
Yeah,
but I got
absolutely.
a few in front of me. The Dark Side of Discipline, which I believe weren't you called the most disciplined?
Yeah, so people saw me as being the most productive person they knew. Because I used to write a lot of newsletters, and they're like, if you're productive, therefore you must be disciplined, which my discipline is really systems. And so for anybody who's like, oh man, I really need to be more disciplined, the book talks about how getting your focus right is the most important thing. Because if you're going off, and if your marriage is your biggest problem in your life, and you're going off and starting in triathlon training and avoiding talking to your spouse, well, it doesn't matter how disciplined you are at triathlons, you're not disciplined at the most important thing. And then once you figure out what you should focus on, then it shows you how to make time to do it. So if somebody is struggling to work on the number one thing in their life, they need that book.
This is a lesson I learned kind of on my, I guess, the hard way, I would say. I used to do the Army Ranger thing. I had a lot of discipline. I've run marathons. I've done triathlons. I've climbed mountains. I've done all those things. But sometimes I wasn't always disciplined on the right things in life. And fortunately, I got some grace from people around me. We helped figure it out. And but along the way, it's a hard lesson to learn. So people pick that up, and you can learn that lesson a lot easier, perhaps, if you can learn from somebody else.
Right.
Okay, now let's talk about the perfect week formula.
Perfect week formula is for the entrepreneur. This is like, if somebody is a business owner and they have more projects than time, you need this book, because it'll help you organize your days and your weeks so that you have maximum productivity. It'll show you how to use our ADE formula, which is automate, delegate, and eliminate, so that you're not doing the work that isn't your job, so that you free up your time to focus on higher value stuff. This one is the one that, when anybody who's an entrepreneur asks me which book to start with, that's the one.
I was watching a video where you were talking about things like like who's going to do something. And you were saying like during a Zoom call, when you're recording a Zoom call, just take a moment in the Zoom call and say, Craig just signed up to do blah, 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 to get this to the three of us by Tuesday at 7. Craig, you good with that? You say yes, just to make sure it's locked into those notes. I thought that's pretty smart. So you have a nice, otherwise you're kind of combing back through it, trying to find it, and AI is great, but it may have missed it. So calling it out and getting Craig to say, yep, or if it's wrong, if I heard it wrong, you can correct me.
Yeah, absolutely.
How does that companion piece with the Perfect Day Formula?
So the Perfect Day Formula was the first book that I wrote, and it's really about understanding that it's actually based on Stoic philosophy. And so when I was struggling with anxiety attacks, which I had about 20 years ago, and I stumbled across Stoicism, it really helped me because the Perfect Day Formula is about controlling what you can control. There are certain things in the day that you can control, and mostly what you can control are your thoughts, words, and your deeds. And you can't control whether your boss or your partner is angry. You can't control whether there's traffic. You can't control if it's raining. You can't control if somebody, wanted a refund on your product. All you can control is how you respond to it. And you can structure your day with as much control as possible to get the most out of it. So the more structure you have in your day, the more freedom you have in your life. So for anybody who's just super overwhelmed and busy, and definitely someone who's like can't figure out their morning routine because that's really the time of day when you are going to be most productive, that's the book to go to.
Well, I think I've fallen into some of the things that you teach with folks. And that one part is the idea of, I've heard you say, I vacation when people aren't vacationing.
Yeah.
I go to the gym when people aren't at the gym. Yeah. My wife and I have loved doing that type of thing. We're happy to go vacation at the places. First of all, you pay less. It's easier to get around, and nobody else is there because everybody else is living for that 1 or 2 weeks a year where they can get their time off, as opposed to saying, I can choose when I want to have my time off.
Exactly.
Totally different approach to life in so many ways.
Absolutely. And I'm on the road when nobody else is on the road, so I don't get stuck in traffic.
Exactly. All right. Unstoppable. You talked about anxiety. Unstoppable. How to get through hell, overcome anxiety, and dominate in business and in life.
Yeah, I guess this is probably the most personal story of my books. And so I was about 30 years old when I had 2 anxiety attacks that sent me to the emergency room. And then I just uncovered every rock. I turned over every rock to find the ways that could help me get rid of anxiety, because if anybody who's listening to this has ever had a panic attack or anxiety attack, you would do anything to get rid of it. And now that I'm on the other side of it, and I have all these tools that I outline in the book, I mean, you could put me through all the stress in the world and I wouldn't have anxiety because I have all these tools. And I don't laugh at people that have anxiety. I'm not doing that, but I laugh at anxiety itself and know that, this is all totally controllable. And I believe that if you have anxiety, it can be managed, it can be overcome, no drugs necessary, and it's all about reframing your thinking, doing some positive outlet activities, journaling, even talk therapy, but not keeping things in your head and making up stories, and then just making sure that you don't have any of the negatives that trigger your anxiety, drugs, alcohol, too much caffeine, the type of people that cause you anxiety and stress. We just need to eliminate those things because you get a lot of success through subtraction.
Well, hey, man, I really appreciate you joining us today and helping us reframe our thinking about a number of these things. I'll put your link to your website in the notes so people can check it out. And they can check out your books, learn more about you, maybe get involved in some of your mastermind work. I'm so glad you're in my universe. And you said you don't watch sports anymore. Do you watch hockey at least?
It's funny. I don't. I actually gave up all sports.
I figure you're going to tell me you're a big Canucks fan.
No, I'm not. I love the game. But I just got to the point, I had this moment in Denver in like 2015. I came into a hotel room because that's where we had an office for a business. And I turned on the NFL. And 2.5 hours later, I blinked and went, where did my life go? And I was like, I'm never letting this happen again. And so I, now that I got the young kids, just no time for it. But I believe it's a beautiful game, and I have taken my kids to a game, and they're entertaining. But I just gave up pro sports.
That's a different experience, though, going to an event than watching it on television. All right, we always have the same question at the end. Ooh. So my EA Jess challenged me not that long ago because I have a routine that I follow around the coffee I drink every day.
Okay.
And oftentimes, if I'm traveling or if I'm out and about, I'll go to this place out of Seattle with a green logo and a mermaid on the door. And I go in there and I order the same drink all the time. And she's like, Patrick, how can you be talking about disrupting things if you won't even disrupt your vanilla latte routine? So I've been on the pursuit of the best vanilla latte, which really is me just trying new places, which has been great. My question for you is, have you ever been on the pursuit of a perfect drink or food? And if so, did you find it? What was it?
That's a great question. So I didn't start drinking coffee until I was 44, believe it or not.
And it doesn't have to be coffee. It could be whatever you want.
It just happens that I was actually at a coffee shop today with the owner of a coffee shop, grilling him about different types of coffee. And we were having a conversation about coffee. And I was telling him that when I go to a coffee shop, I test them out with a cappuccino. And they immediately fail if they don't bring the cappuccino in a mug with a handle. Like a lot of these new places are putting them in these like alcohol looking glasses, and so I'm like, immediately I don't like this place. And so I was talking, I didn't start coffee till I was late, but now I'm really into mostly espresso drinks, but I try a cappuccino. So that is probably the only thing. That and protein bars. I will try every single protein bar in the world is another thing that I'm always on the hunt for.
I had this guy on the show not that long ago. He's an author. He wrote a series called Red Rising. His name is Pierce Brown. And he was talking about his was the pursuit of the perfect beef jerky. He said, I found 115 of them, ordered them all, and then started working my way through it. Wow. I was like, all right, man.
That's serious.
Yeah, but sometimes that's how we find like the thing. And once we find it, that's one less decision sometimes we have to make in life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Craig, man. I appreciate, like I said, having you in my universe, and let's continue to stay connected. Folks, check out Craig Ballantyne's website and learn more about what he does.
All right. Thank you.